So I'm still new to truck stops. It sometimes seems a little bit chaotic.
Hi. This week I finished up trucking school. I took my state CDL exam and became a licensed truck driver. 2 days later, I headed out for my first trip with one of the trucks to meet up with a film crew over 1,000 miles away. They had me driving on some roads that had me under so much pressure you could sell me at Tiffany's. Roll with me on my journey as I learn what it's like to spend a week on the road and discuss the process of getting a CDL today and what it might look like in the near future. Over the weekend, I met up with a private state examiner to take my test to obtain my CDL. I passed the test, got my license, and packed up my truck to hit the road from Seattle down to Southern California 2 days later. Less than 2 months ago, I took the general knowledge portion of my test up at my local Department of Licensing. Within 2 weeks, I had my first day of CDL school. I chose that particular school because they had a lot of flexibility.
So I found a CDL school. It took a long time to find the right one because I'm super busy. I'm constantly on the phone, with drivers, with brokers, with shippers. I'm working with different software companies to get different tools refined and built. So there's a lot going on. And so I was looking for a school that could be a little bit more flexible and let me come in maybe on the weekend or come in the evening. And I found a school that did give me some of that flexibility, and it was super flexible, almost to a fault. They were great, but it was very, very informal. They let me kind of come and go when I needed to. Obviously, there's some requirements on how many hours you spend doing different activities. It was actually a really good experience. They prepared me well for class. So I got through that class in about 4 weeks. The first thing they had me do was start working on the pre-trip inspections. I started inside the cab, and for day one, I just read through a sheet and sort of got used to what would be expected of me. The instructor kind of talked about what the state examiner was going to be looking for. And then I actually went home that night and I memorized the in-cab inspection, and I went back on day 2 and I actually completed the in-cab inspection. Now, that's probably atypical, and the reason why I could do that is I was already pretty familiar with the components of the truck, so I was able to pass that part very quickly. Day 2, I actually didn't even go into the school. I actually stayed home so that I could learn. I knew what most of the parts were. There was a few things that were throwing me off, like the difference between a spring mount and a spring hanger. So it did take me a little bit of time to get the outside inspection memorized, but then I had that done by the end of week 1. So I had memorized both the inside pre-trip, the outside pre-trip. So I got all that done. And by the Friday of week 1, I was already working on backing. Because the school was so informal and I had gone so quickly through the pre-trip, I did really well on that. The instructor said, hey, they knew that I owned a trucking company. They said, hey, it looks like you kind of know what you're doing. We're gonna go ahead and let you just go ahead and have the truck and just go ahead and back up. And they didn't actually tell me what to do. So I actually didn't know that there were specific backing maneuvers that the state examiner was going to be looking for. The specific backing maneuvers are the 90-degree alley dock, the parallel back, the parallel parking, and then the offset back, which is very, very similar to the parallel parking. Unfortunately, I worked on that for maybe 30 minutes with the truck for 2 or 3 days, and then finally the owner of the school saw me working on it, and he says, hey, he actually started giving me some framework for how I should be thinking about how I'm backing up. And then I looked into it myself and I realized that there was specific backing maneuvers I was supposed to be working on. So by week 2, I was completely done with backing. I had gotten all the backs down. Again, I had my CDL permit, and so legally I was allowed to ride with my drivers. So that was actually super helpful. So I was able to get some practice in while I was, running Rollsy as well. Week 3, I went out on the highway. So I went with their instructor out on the highway, and this is where things got much, much harder than I expected.
While most trucks on the road today have automated transmissions, I learned how to drive on a 10-speed manual. I decided to do this because if you learn on an automated transmission and take your state exam on that transmission, you will not be able to drive a manual transmission truck until you upgrade your license. I didn't want to have to go back and retake the test, and since I had the luxury of practicing in my own trucks as well as on the simulator and a lot of experience driving manual cars and motorcycles, I decided picking up that extra skill would probably be beneficial. I will add that I was not prepared for how different driving a manual truck would be versus a car or motorcycle. After I felt comfortable driving the truck, I picked up a few more skills from the school that didn't come naturally to me. The things I needed to work on the most were increasing following distance, downshifting, keeping track of all the traffic signs, and of course, finding those gears. I went to my state exam super nervous. It wasn't that I didn't have confidence in my driving skills or knowledge of the truck, but I really had a hard time finding any information on exactly what to expect during the test. Well, when the examiner arrived, the first thing he did was yell at me for being in the yard and not waiting next to the truck I would be driving. I brushed it off and tried not to let that get into my head. After bringing the truck into the range, he got into the cab and took some information from my license and medical card. Then he read me some instructions for doing the light check. After the light check, he re-entered the cab to read me instructions for my in-cab inspection. This would be the last time that I was prompted during that inspection. I went the next 30 minutes completing my in-cab and outside vehicle inspections without any prompts. Next up, backing. This was actually far easier than I expected. I had to back up about 2 truck and trailer lengths in a straight line without hitting any cones. I was allowed to pull up once without penalty, but I passed that one without any pull-ups. Next was the offset back, where I had to back up into a lane on the blind side of the truck or on the passenger side of the truck. I was allowed 2 pull-ups for that maneuver, but I didn't need either one of those. Last was the 90-degree alley dock, where you have to go back 90 degrees into a lane between 2 lines of cones. I used both of my 2 allowed pull-ups and my get out and lugs. I realize now that the 90-degree backing maneuver was difficult for me because when I wasn't driving the school's trucks, I was driving my own trucks. The difference between a 28-foot trailer with 1 axle slid all the way to the rear, the school's trucks, and a 53-foot tandem axle trailer slid 10 feet from the rear, my trucks, is not insignificant. My backing for both trailers got much worse over the last few weeks, and it's going to take me some time to adjust. After successfully getting through all the backing maneuvers, my examiner and I hit the road. We did all kinds of turns, accelerating, shifting, bridges, railroad crossings, unprotected turns through downtown Tacoma, Washington, and emergency stops. I definitely did not ace this test. I forgot to select high range on my transmission as I was ascending a hill on a bridge, causing all kinds of gear grinding and a misshift. I misidentified a street sign, and I probably did a few things wrong that I don't even know about. But none of them were automatic fail offenses. While the examiner isn't allowed to tell me how I did, I can say that my examiner followed the test guidelines with precision. I know this from firsthand experience because 4 days earlier, I took the exam and I failed.
I had my test scheduled a week or 2 after I finished CDL school. Failed the test the first time. What happened was I was going through my pre-check. When I was doing the air systems leak test, I was looking for both a light to come on the dashboard and a buzzer to sound when the air got too low. On the truck that I was testing on, it was a truck that I had never driven before. It was the school's truck, and they had quite a few of them. And this one did not have a buzzer. And so it really threw me off. So instead of letting the truck complete the test with just the light, I said low air leak detection system is broken. Maybe it's a bad sensor or something. But the truck actually did pass the test, and you only have to have a light or a buzzer. You don't actually have to have both. So I did fail the test the first time,
but I got my CDL. So I've been driving south, learning about the rules of the road, of the truck stop, of the fuel island.
I'm also going really slow still in these truck stops. I see some of these guys just flying through, and part of me wishes that I had that confidence. Part of me wishes they would slow down. So I'm still new to truck stops. It sometimes seems a little bit chaotic. I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to get out of here. Sometimes it's not completely clear.
Observing with wide eyes what all the other truckers are saying and doing, feeling the nervousness of going through weigh stations. I really hope that feeling goes away after a while. I slept in my truck, which was actually really nice. I'm headed to a small town where a film crew has asked my company to participate in some content creation. I jumped at the opportunity and have been really excited about it for weeks, hoping everything would come together. My partner Chanel even flew down to ride with me on the day of filming and then back up to Washington at the end of the week. Before I could meet her, I needed to get the truck washed. Driving through the Shasta forest created an insect graveyard on the front of the truck that needed to be remedied, so I went to a Blue Beacon for a quick bath and then met Chanel right afterwards. We then went over to the town we were filming in and the real fun began. We were going up and down a road that I would have paid to drive on with my motorcycle, but as a brand new driver in a sleeper cab pulling a 53-foot trailer, I was less excited. We were led by a truck carrying both a videographer as well as a photographer. There were photographers placed along the route, a chase drone, and me, sweating behind the wheel as I did all I could to be safe and not do any damage to the road, the cliffs, or my truck. At the end of the day, for the final shot, we had a helicopter chase us for about 15 miles during golden hour. It was gorgeous. Orange groves, hills, meadows, and even a lake. I had so much fun and was privileged to be a part of it. I can't wait to see some of the photos and videos from the day of shooting. Headed back home, Chanel and I got a little taste of what life is like for some of the team drivers out there. We experienced the absolute terror of gusty wind hitting an empty trailer and sleeping in a sketchy rest stop, the beauty of the West Coast, and even, of course, the normal road trip shenanigans.
I remember that night I just went. I remember that night I just went.
I remember that night I just might regret that night for the rest of my days.
I even experienced my first truck stop shower.
These are all disinfected pretty well, actually. They even give you some fresh towels, and then the shower itself, of course, is in here.
I'll be on the road occasionally. while it's important that I'm available and free to run the business for most of my working hours, I also think there is value in learning what my drivers experience, what kind of time expectations are realistic, and what it's like to be away from home for days at a time. If you've ever considered driving a truck and want to know more about what you can expect from the job, feel free to leave a question in the comments or roll with us as I offer insights on running a fleet of trucks. There are some new rules being proposed about how many hours you need in training and what types of schools are allowed to provide that training. There are also some new requirements that the FMCSA is going to have at the federal level that are going to go into effect in 2022. So you might consider getting that CDL sometime within the next year. In Washington, the requirements to get your CDL are already pretty high, with a number of in-class as well as behind-the-wheel hours already mandated by the state. So ask any questions you might have. Until then, keep the shiny side up.